And anyone who pretends that this is a genocide is actually anti-Semitic, right? That's the thing we're going through.
It is deeply entrenched in our way of thinking in the West that there is a binary, that there is a good guy and there's a bad guy. This multipolar world is coming. These countries are rising. So this is a good thing.
The double standards to me are most glaring on the Western side. I mean, not to say that the other great powers and so on are flawless, but we are going through a moment in time where the Western world is crying genocide over Xinjiang and Uyghurs, while saying what Palestine, it's normal that every day 70 to 100 people just die because bombs just explode. That's normal. And anyone who pretends that this is a genocide is actually anti-Semitic, right? That's the thing we're going through. How do we? These are such glaring hypocrisies that I wonder that they really also don't they undermine the fundamental as you said, trust needed to say like, okay, if we set out a standard together, you and I, then we can trust that both of us will have a similar understanding of them. The history of the US has been again try to build institutions in order to use the institutions for power projection. That's obviously not what China or Russia or others want. They want institutions in order to manage, not to dominate. Or I hope that's what they want, the globe. Or maybe that's one of the Western fears that if China builds an international institution, it will do exactly the same what the West did, which is try to use it as a power projection tool. How do you see, how can we resolve this?
Well, I think that is the fear, and I think it's a deeply held fear. And I think if we look at the Western tradition over hundreds of years, we can see why we in the West have built a set of values, and we believe that we have perfected those over hundreds of years. We believe we have less double standards than we used to. We genuinely believe that, I think, in Western societies, and compared with the way European powers colonized the world. The West is a much better actor now than probably it was a few hundred years ago. But it is deeply entrenched in our way of thinking in the West that there is a binary, that there is a good guy and there's a bad guy. And so if we've come to the conclusion that we're the good guys, and for many reasons, there is lots of evidence for that, lots of reasons why people in the West believe we have the best standard of living and the best quality of life and the best institutions. So that kind of hubris, if you like, which can look very aggressive to people in the rest of the world. I think we can understand why we feel that way in the West. And so the challenge for us is to now come to grips with a changing world order that, okay, the West has dominated the world and we did make lots of mistakes, but we think we've learned some of those. There's more to learn. There's a lot more to learn about the complexity of civilizations and of philosophies and of the different ways that countries in Asia see the world. And China is the big one. China is the obvious one that we have to come to grips with, but India is not far behind. And I think Indonesia will be not far behind, and Vietnam. These are all hugely different civilizations from Western civilization. And thanks to development, thanks to globalization, thanks to the successful development we've seen, especially in East Asia, but we're seeing it now spread to the rest of the developing world. This multipolar world is coming. These countries are rising, their living standards are rising, hundreds of millions, actually billions of people are living better today in those countries than ever before. So this is a good thing. This is a very good thing that the world is not as unequal as it was in the past. So how do we in the Western countries that always benefited from the previous system, how do we grapple with how do we deal with a new, more diverse world, with a more multipolar world? There's no easy answer to this, but this is why I'm suggesting that we do need to rethink the narratives around international relations, because they've all been written in Washington, in London and Brussels and other places, and Canberra, places in the West where we've had our particular view of the world. I think we've now got to look at the world as a place with a diversity of worldviews. And we have to, those of us who want to have a peaceful world, we're going to need to resuscitate internationalism, but it may not be the liberal internationalism that those of us who come from liberal democracies wish to see in the whole world. It's just not realistic. We need a more sustainable internationalism that can cope with difference, that can actually acknowledge that, okay, you have a different political system, you even might have a slightly different economic system than ours, but we are going to actually deal with you. We're going to find a way to manage those risks. We're going to develop the rules and institutions to build trust. And I think if we don't do that, we are headed to disaster. So it seems to me we need these voices. They're not very loud voices at the moment because I think we're deep in the middle of a real decline in trust, and it could take some time for us to work our way out of that. It will certainly take political leadership. And my final comment on this whole problem is that in our Western liberal democracies, we're very proud of our democratic traditions. But what seems to have happened in the social media era, with the decline of the business model for traditional media, with the more professional political class of people who are not necessarily leaders who've come out of leadership experience in the real world, but we have politicians who've spent their whole lives just working in politics. We are now in a world, even in these liberal democracies with very proud traditions, like my own home country of Australia, but we're now in a political bubble of lots of political speak where politicians feel a need to talk in these very dramatic terms, a need to talk about threats and we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, perhaps even more than in the past. Perhaps even this is even a bigger problem to have a conversation about complexity where when our politicians are jumping to a 24-hour media cycle and when there's declining trust in the liberal democracies, in our own political class, so we don't even trust them. So it's almost like everything is going wrong at the same time. It's like a perfect storm. So to try and solve these problems, it's not easy.